What if I told you that before you ever met someone from Africa, before you ever spoke to a Russian, before you ever sat next to an Asian American in class, before ever had a real conversation with a black man from another neighborhood, your opinion was already forming? Not from statistics, not from personal experience, but from movies. Hollywood doesn't just entertain you, it trains you. It quietly teaches you who to fear, who to trust, who is dangerous, who needs saving, who belongs, and who feels like an outsider. And the most powerful part, you don't even notice it's happening because it feels like it's just a movie. Doesn't matter, right? But here's the reality. If the only time you see Africans is during war, if the only time you see Africans is when there is poverty, when there is hunger, when there is corruption, if the only time you see black men is during crime stories, if the only time you see Asians is as foreign geniuses or mysterious outsiders, if the only time you see Russians is as villains, that repetition doesn't stay on screen. It follows you into voting booths, into jury rooms, into classrooms, into airports, into security lines, into everyday conversations. Stories shape perception. Perception shapes politics. And politics shapes how people treat each other. So today we're going to ask a simple question. It's uncomfortable, but it's simple. When entire races and nationalities are framed the same way for decades, what does that do to how we see each other in real life? Because most of what we know about people we've never met came from somewhere, and that somewhere is often Hollywood. Blood Diamonds, The Last King of Scotland, Black Hawk Down, Hotel Rwanda. What do these movies have in common? War, corruption, genocide, chaos, and foreign intervention. These films are based on real life events. They tell important stories, they expose brutality, they honor victims. But when global audiences repeatedly see Africa framed through conflict and crisis, something deeper happens. A continent of 54 countries, over 1.4 billion people, thousands of languages, diverse economies become one simplified narrative: instability. And that perception doesn't stay on screen, it shades subconscious assumptions. When someone says Africa, many Western audiences immediately picture child soldiers, starving children, militia groups, aid workers, not tech innovations in Nairobi, not financial hubs in Lagos, not universities in Cape Town, not middle class suburbs. That imbalance has consequences. Investors hesitate because Africa is risky. Tourists fear because Africa is dangerous. Government adopt paternalistic policies because Africa needs saving. Africa becomes something to rescue, not something to respect as equal. The problem isn't telling hard stories. The problem is when hard stories become the only stories. This has long been the justification for programs like USAID, even justifying a lot of money laundering, a lot of theft, a lot of corruption, even fostering corruption in Africa, the same Africa they are starting to help, because the leaders could see that these programs were helping indiscriminately. They were sending money indiscriminately, regardless of what the leaders of the countries were doing with the money. Now, Training Day, Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, The Wire. What connects them? Crime, drugs, violence, surveillance, policing, and moral decay. These are powerful, critically acclaimed stories about real systematic issues. They highlight injustice, they reveal structural problems. But repetition matters. When black neighborhoods are consistently shown through crime narratives, audiences begin to unconsciously associate black identity with threat. Psychology shows that repeated exposure to certain imagery affects split second judgment. Many Americans significantly overestimate crime rates among black men. Why? Because the cultural imagery is saturated with that association. And that perception influences jury decisions, policing intensity, political rhetoric, law and order campaigns, support for harsher sentencing laws. During the 1990s, political leaders used terms like super predators. That fear based language did not exist in isolation. It was reinforced by the media ecosystem, including film and television. Culture doesn't write laws, but it prepares the emotional environment that makes those laws acceptable. Now, compare that with Black Panther. That film centered black identity around science, monarchy, governance, innovation, diplomacy. It presented African American identity not as crisis, but as power. And the global reaction was massive. Because for once, the dominant frame shifted, representation shifts perception. Perception shifts political conversation. But even Black Panther itself isn't perfect. Because it still showed Africa with the same lens that Americans usually already do, which is, though Wakanda was a very advanced place, it was basically in the middle of the jungle. It had political instability in that they were fighting for positions. They weren't democratic. They were fighting for who becomes the leader. So it was 5 steps in the 5 steps forward, but still 2 steps back.